Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Namofsky. Today we're learning to negotiate. Fotini, is there a lot of bias in negotiation?
Absolutely. I mean, there have been countless studies on the subject of bias in negotiation, not just bias against women, but bias against people who don't fit that privileged norm. So whether you're a person of color, whether you're a woman, whether it's ageism, there's a ton of it, but there are lots of ways to also overcome it.
You know, it's interesting. The first show that I did on Empowered, I had Rita Torture on from the Globe and Mail, and she was talking about negotiating. And she basically said that she contacted a friend of hers and said, I need to negotiate, quote unquote, like a white man does, because I don't know what to do. And he basically said, ask for everything. And she said, I can't ask for everything. That's not who I am. It's not the way it works. And he said, ask for everything. You'll get 90%. So we work in male-dominated industries. Does negotiating work the same way for both male and female negotiators?
I it pains me to say it, but it doesn't work the same way. That doesn't mean that women can't ask for everything. It just means we have to be much more careful to do it in a way that is perceived as cooperative. Because the default when people are negotiating against women, and whether this comes from men or women, women will still treat other women in a negotiation with bias as well. The default is we are often perceived as gritty, as greedy, as aggressive, some of those words that we don't like to hear. And so we have to be very mindful of being perceived as cooperative, as being perceived as problem solvers. So we need to make our approach one that is going to be better received, because men are given a lot more runway for that aggressive kind of labeled behavior.
Okay, so, let's just continue on with that because I saw on your Instagram page that you talked about rocking the boat. Should you or shouldn't you rock the boat?
You have to. If you want to change direction, I mean, I made the analogy on Instagram because I heard someone else say, never rock the boat. I'm like, but then you're just going to keep going in their direction. And so when it comes to when you're going on a voyage of some kind, if you want to go in your direction, you're going to have to rock it a little bit. I'm not suggesting you rock it so much that people fall off, that it capsizes and so on, but we rock it gently enough that people are going, okay, well, I'm with you on this. I might have a little bit of resistance, and that's why we have to do this back and forth thing. But that's what gets us to this new destination. If you don't rock the boat, you're going to be headed in their direction. You won't have a choice.
So, you're talking about rocking the boat. That causes a lot of stress for people. So let's talk about finding your mental health pause button when you are emotionally invested, because it takes a lot.
Yeah. And the closer you are to it, obviously, the more invested you are. It's very easy for me as a third party who goes in and coaches people to say, here's how you can handle the situation. It's very different when your fight or flight, freeze or fawn is all kicking in all at one time. So it is important to access what we call that mental pause button. I like to call it, I think of literally a button in the center of my forehead and go, how can I access that? The number one way you can access it is if you have done that preparation in advance. If you have thought about all of the things that you want to say and what you want to go after, if you have literally said the words out loud to create some muscle memory for your brain so that in the moment you're not stumbling over your words, your brain goes, despite this fight or flight, I know where to find it somewhere. This is something that I can recall instead of constructing something from scratch under stress. It's finding things like, a moment of breath, whether it's a meditative breath of breathing in for 4 and out for 8, whether it's picturing yourself on a beach in Mexico with a margarita in your hand, whether it is repeating a positive mantra to yourself. Any of those things that work for you, you've got to find your coping mechanisms, but whatever it is, it's going to help you find that pause button. Breathing is the easy access one. Again, recalling something that you've already done, having that little pep talk with yourself that goes, I got this, I prepared for this. Those little things may seem trivial, but they go a really long way. And in fact, the one that I think makes the biggest difference for folks is something I picked up from Dr. Kelly McGonigal in her book, The Upside of Stress. She talks about the fact that our brains, basically the center of our brain that thinks about anxiety, is also the same part that processes excitement. So what if in the moment, instead of feeling anxious about this negotiation, what if you could flip your brain and go, I am so excited to show them what I'm capable of. I am so excited to show them why I deserve all of these things. If you do that, studies show us time and time again, you will have better results. You will prime your brain to perform better under pressure than if you did become a victim of your anxiety. So can you switch that anxiousness into excitement? And it goes a really long way.
You know what? I really like that. I like the fact that you've taken this stressful situation that people kind of walk away from because there's so much conflict, and you've turned it around and said, you know what, this is exciting now. Let's see what we can do. Let's see what we can get. Let's see how we do in this, because after all, it is a test. When we come back, we're going to talk about dealing with nonverbal expressions, because no matter how much you prepare, body language is a whole different thing.